Good evening. My name is Lance Knuckles. I have the privilege of being the Senior Vice President of Neighborhood and Community Transformations and hosting this session today for the North St. Louis Small Business and Nonprofit Grant Program. Before we get started with this informational session, please know that we will not take questions during this informational session. However, we do want you to participate and include your questions in the chat function, and we will gather those questions and provide them in a collective response on our website on Friday, August the 11th at the end of business. So again, there will not be an opportunity to speak within this informational session where this is for informational purposes only, and to record and allow this to be posted on our website for future use and reference for all of our businesses, both nonprofit and for-profit. Today's informational session will cover a few key topics. One is the program purpose and background, partnerships and operational flowchart, what's new overview, and a what's new deep dive. And then we'll also speak to the application itself and the budget templates that go along with this program for submission. The purpose of the program and background are as follows. The purpose is to support the reinvestment in small businesses located within North St. Louis. Critical background information includes that these funds were moved forward in the first allocation using Board Bill 82, and revisions were made during the 2023-24 legislative session to align with the U.S. Treasury requirements and guidelines, which now we're moving forward with the legislation as defined within Board Bill number 37. And the St. Louis Small Business and Nonprofit Grant Program is funded through coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds passed through the St. Louis Community Development Administration. We'll talk about the program overview. The critical programs within this grant opportunity are stabilization, expansion, community need, and community enhancement, which includes both facade as well as rehabilitation and new construction. SLDC has developed a critical partnership with the National Development Council, better known as NDC, to work with small businesses to help them increase their capacity to have an effective application, and more importantly, to be able to have sound business practices in place to be the most competitive as possible within this grant opportunity. NDC will work with each business and provide the following activities. One is a business viability assessment to really understand, is the business viable at the beginning of the process? They will also establish the financial position of the organization, provide support in developing a short business plan, and ensure that each applicant has a complete application. And then they will provide a financially supported funding recommendation to SLDC for consideration as the program moves forward. The operational flow is really important to help you understand how things move from receiving your application here at SLDC to how funding decisions are made in the future. So I will go through these steps in detail to ensure that you understand the process and procedures. We start with SLDC receiving the application. SLDC staff will review and assess eligibility, and then run a CBI clearance with the Business License Office and the Collector of Revenue. Once that is completed, we'll send each business a release of information form that would allow us to share your application with NDC, who will begin the assessment process. And so if you move to the right side of our presentation, NDC has a series of activities that they're responsible for and supporting us to execute. First, it would engage each business via email to confirm who they are and why they're engaging with each business to support you moving your application forward. Each business will be assigned a business consultant, and that business consultant would begin to work with each business in one-on-one sessions. There's an opportunity within this program for businesses who seek and also engage in training to receive an additional $5,000 in their program submission for completing that training. It is not required. However, it is strongly recommended for each business to take advantage of these training opportunities, whereas they will cover things like marketing, customer acquisition, operations, and fiscal management that are really important for all of our business to continue to move forward here in the city of St. Louis. They will also complete a full set of financial documents that help describe the financial position of each organization for stabilization and expansion and or for community need and community enhancement. And then they will make a funding recommendation to SLDC that will be driven by those financial documents to help SLDC staff and internal review committees understand the business and the nature of the request. Upon receiving that funding recommendation from NDC, there is an internal review committee. That internal review committee will review all applications, and then any submission and funding recommendation over $250,000 will also go through a secondary committee review with our substantial awards committee to ensure that we're adding another layer of accountability and responsibility for grants over $250,000. Then those applicants will move to the SLDC board for approval. And prior to moving into signing a grant agreement, we will conduct another CBI clearance to ensure potential awardees are in good standing with both the business license office and the collector of revenue. Upon that confirmation, SLDC will work with the business to sign a grant agreement, and then funds will be dispersed based upon that grant agreement. It is really important for all businesses to understand that there is compliance requirements in being a benefactor of award dollars from this program, and that is based upon the funding source and the type and your project. And so each funding agreement will be relevant and focused on the type of grant opportunity that each business is moving forward and communicating the appropriate compliance that will be required for record keeping and communicating with SLDC about use of funds as the business moves forward. What's new overview? Grant programs in this process, there's geographic eligibility. There's definitions that are really important for us to make sure all of our applicants are aware of. And then we'll also talk about the application structure and the budget templates to move forward in this process. As we think about geographic eligibility, the program now has geographic eligibility as defined by a business or nonprofit located on or north of Del Mar, located within the HUD qualified census tract, or located within the Economic Justice Index area 1 or 2. It is really important to understand that geographic eligibility is based upon the business address, and that is defined as the location of standard business operations and storing of financial records and assets. So it is really important to understand that the address is critical as being the number one address that the business is conducting its activity and engaging with customers. So to help us really understand that, I want to take us to the actual place to do verification here on the link that's located on the page. And you can enter an address, and I'm going to enter an address on Del Mar. and explore the eligibility. So as you see on the screen, you will see a highlighted section which identifies, and I'll zoom out, not in, zoom out to show the eligibility areas that are highlighted, and then I'll zoom in closer to the address and help explain some eligibility. So as we stated, a business located on or north of Del Mar is eligible. And more specifically, if a business is located on the southern side of Del Mar, like 5900 Del Mar, that business is still eligible because it is on a corridor on Del Mar and north of Del Mar. That business, however, because it is not in a HUD qualified census tract or in an economic justice index area 1 or 2, that business would need to provide financial documentation to prove adverse impact. So again, this business is eligible because it is on a corridor, and both sides of any corridor, especially Del Mar, are eligible for this program. However, an address on the southern side of Del Mar will be required to prove adverse impact. So we'll continue to move forward. So again, businesses located on or north of Del Mar, located in HUD qualified census tracts, or located in the economic justice index area 1 or 2 are eligible for consideration with this program. So I want to go deeper into eligibility examples. We have an example. What if my business address is located outside of the eligible geography and outside of the city limits, but I provide services to residents within North St. Louis? This example, that business would not be eligible for this program. We have a few other examples that might be really helpful for listeners in this session. For businesses that are applying for community need, which is about providing a needed service in community, our first example is, what if my business is seeking to provide a community need within the eligible geography and my business address is outside of the eligible geography and I have not secured a location, whether it's a signed lease agreement or purchased a location within the eligible geography? This business would not be eligible for this program. Example 3. What if my business is seeking to provide a community need within the eligible geography and my business address is outside of the eligible geography and I have secured a location, I guess it should have said have secured a location within eligible geography, but seeking to use the grant opportunity to explore the purchase of a new location? This business would not be eligible. The thing that I want to point out in this moment in time, if a business is moving into North St. Louis and is seeking to provide a service, there needs to be a secured location in advance of the application, whether it's a signed lease agreement or an acquisition of a parcel that the business has ownership of. And our final example, what if my business is seeking to provide a community need within the eligible geography and I have secured a location and a signed lease within the eligible geography? That business would be eligible to participate in this program. So we'll continue to move into definitions because this is really important around eligibility. So as we talk about a small business, we're talking about a business type that is the LLC, corporation, partnership, or sole proprietorships. that have a number of employees. The Small Business Administration defines a small business as employing 500 or fewer employees. However, this grant will prioritize small businesses with 100 employees or less. Here's the piece we want to dive into about an eligible established small business would have the following things in their ownership or stewardship: business name, registered business with the Missouri Secretary of State, business license issued by the City of St. Louis License Collector's Office, a unique entity identification number, not included within the federal inclusion database, meets the geographic eligibility, and has a federal tax identification number. These things are critical for a business to be eligible. You could be eligible by geography, but you need to also have these basic information and these tools in place at the time of application to be eligible for the program. As we talk about nonprofit businesses, we're referring to organization that is a legal entity organized and operated for the collective public and or social benefit, in contrast with an entity that operates as a business aiming to generate a profit for its own owners. Also, we want to dive into what are the critical pieces for a nonprofit organization to be established as eligible. The business needs to have the articles of incorporation, bylaws, good standing certificate with the Missouri Secretary of State, federal and state tax designation, business license exemption letter from the St. Louis City License Collector's Office, unique entity identification number, not included within the federal exclusion database, and meets the general geography eligibility criteria. We want to move forward and really talk about the budget and required documents and what's new in that space. And so we'll cover stabilization, expansion, community need, and community enhancement across both facade and rehabilitation and new construction. To submit a complete application, it is important to ensure that as you review the application, you complete all the steps. Step one is to ensure that you complete the general business information, which is required for all applicants. Step two, review the grant program options and indicate by checking the box for the grant program you are applying for funding and completing the associated sections. Step three is really important to make sure you gather all required supportive documents and be prepared to share them with NDC and SLDC as you move forward. And then more importantly along that is having a completed agreement and signed page to ensure that you understand the self-attestations and that we have the signature of the business owner for the business seeking funds through this program. Required document section, as we spoke about, each business or nonprofit organization needs to provide all the information that's included in the application and the required documents list. I do want to highlight the section about internal verification that SLDC will conduct with other offices and agencies to ensure eligibility for the program. We will connect with the Collector of Revenue and the License Collector's Office around good standing. We will engage our compliance partner in Community Development Administration. We will reference the sam.gov site to ensure that each business is in good standing and not in debarment status. We will engage with planning and the urban design agency, more specifically the Cultural Resources Office, if you happen to be looking to do facade work or rehabilitation on a site that may be of historic nature or magnitude. And we will continue to check geographic location and eligibility using the tool that we described and showed to you earlier. And it is required for each business to have a COVID impact statement within the application. But again, those businesses that are seeking eligibility on the south side of Del Mar will also need to include financial proof of adverse impact as a part of the documentation that they will work to create with our partners at NDC. For stabilization, this is the section you would need to complete and telling your story about how your business can be stabilized. And by stabilization, we are defining as operating support for business or nonprofit to maintain standard operations, which means the standard operations of your business prior to COVID. And that would be the number that we would try our very best to support your organization getting back to. Eligible stabilization costs include costs to provide operational support to maintain the small business or nonprofit's standard operations, such as payroll or benefit costs, costs to retain employees, mortgage, rent, or utility costs, and other costs that comply with the U.S. Treasury rules and regulations for SLRF funds. At the end of each section within the application, there is a budget template that needs to be completed once you complete the narrative questions. And so I'll take us to a template and provide you some perspective on how you might complete that information. So we have a budget template that you can use at your disposal to ensure that you submit a thoughtful and complete application. Within this budget template, you may use the yellow highlighted areas to include information about your application, or more specifically, your budget request. It is really important to include the detailed budget narrative to inform the number that you created within your budget. And I'll give you an example. If we have payroll as one of our opportunities within your program request, that if you were to say you would hire 2 staff at $20 per hour for X number of hours, you would use that information to inform the total, and that total number you would add and include as an example. We'll just make this number up for training purposes only, that ends up being $2,000. And so as you notice, the Excel spreadsheet auto-populates the total for you to continue to move forward. In addition, if you have expense items that are not listed in the white section, you can add in new items that are eligible for the program and type those things in, and it'll add those things up for you as we showed you before. So again, this is a stabilization budget template for you to use to ensure that you have the most accurate submission as you move forward. So we want to talk about expansion. The expansion program is defined as business activity that supports the operational growth only of the business and its ability to scale to respond to market opportunities. Eligible expansion costs include to provide operational support to expand the small business or nonprofit's operations, such as additional payroll or benefit cost, cost to hire new employees, increased inventory, and added mortgage, rent, or utility cost, and other expansion costs that comply with the U.S. Treasury rules and regulations for SLRF funding. And again, that budget template is made available for you. We won't revisit that template again, but this also is a template that is for your use to include additional items that detail budget narrative and the amount to ensure that we have a total that is accurate based upon the request of your funding opportunity. Community needs. Community needs program is only for established businesses with site control expanding into eligible geographic areas. Business can also complete the facade section of the application if applicable. As we define community need, it is a small business or nonprofit organization filling a gap in needed professional or health services or enhanced retail or cultural offerings within the neighborhood. And again, we talk about the geographic location to ensure that businesses who are attempting to locate in North St. Louis are already present and have access and ownership or lease control of a site within an eligible geography. Eligible community need costs include expansion costs to provide operational support to expand the small business or nonprofit operations, such as additional payroll or benefit costs, cost to hire new employees, increased inventory, and added mortgage, rent, or utility costs and other expansion costs that comply with the U.S. Treasury rule and regulations for SLRF funding. Additionally, eligible community need costs include rehabilitation of commercial properties, storefront improvement, facade improvements, and other costs. SLDC will assess applications for project readiness and catalytic impact. Assessment of project readiness will be based upon factors such as site control, property status, including any encumbrances, project budget, and construction plan readiness. Assessment of catalytic impact will be based upon community support, whether there is intended use filling a gap or a need in a neighborhood, and whether the intended use will draw people into the community. And again, we reference the budget template that is always noted in section 6 for each program to complete. And again, use the additional information, be sure to add additional items, make sure you include a detailed budget narrative and the amount, and that Excel spreadsheet will add those numbers up for you. Community enhancement program, and this section is for this facade program only. We'll talk further about the community enhancement program for rehabilitation and new construction shortly. For the community enhancement program is defined as rehabilitation of existing structures and or new construction, which serves to empower, develop, and transform communities. Eligible community enhancement costs can include rehabilitation of a building and or nonprofit properties, storefronts, facade improvements, and other costs. SLDC will assess applications for project readiness and catalytic impact. Assessment of project readiness will be based upon factors such as site control, property status, including any encumbrances, project budget, and construction plan readiness. Assessment of catalytic impact will be based upon community support, whether the intended use fills a gap or need in neighborhoods, and whether the intended use will draw people into the community. So in section 6 that we've talked about throughout our application and our conversation today so far, the budget template is really important. And on this page, again, this budget template is to be used for stabilization, expansion, community need, and facade only. The Excel template has each tab within the document. So if you're applying for the expansion program and facade, you can use the same budget template within your submission and include that with your application. Excuse me. So as we think about the rehabilitation and new construction application and budget template, this part of the program is a little more complex and requires more information. And so the simple budget template that we've talked about in previous programs does not suffice and provide ample information for SLDC to make sound decisions based upon your application. So the community enhancement budget and application program has a number of tabs that provide. Tab 1 is the instructions to ensure that each applicant is following those instructions on how to complete the submission. Then there is the Community Enhancement Project Development Cost Standards. There's the comprehensive application. There's the development budget. There's the construction cost for the project. Sources and uses for the program. WMBE requirements and targets. Loan calculation sheet. A draw sheet that will be used post-funding to ensure that draws are conducted in an orderly and fashionable way. And then finally, the Exhibit C. So again, it is really important for those who are applying for the community enhancement, rehabilitation, and new construction, complete this grant application to ensure that you have the information attached to the previous application where all applicants must complete the business information section. So how to apply? There's a couple ways to apply. Go to the website and you can download 2 versions of the application, one in Microsoft format and the other in a fillable PDF version. If you're using public computers, we encourage all applicants to bring with them a USB storage device that you can download the application and also save it and work on it if you have to move into that public platform a couple of times to get your application completed and ready for submission. It is really important to know that incomplete applications will not be considered and handwritten applications will not be accepted. And so if you drop a handwritten application off at the office or you scan one into our office, we will communicate to you that your application is not being accepted for consideration and encourage you to use either the Microsoft Word version or the fillable PDF along with the Excel files for the budget template, as well as the additional application for community enhancement, for rehabilitation, and new construction. SLDC reserves the right to request additional information to make informed decisions within the grant selection process. As we defined earlier in this presentation today, there is a page of required documents, but as our partners at National Development Council goes through your program and process, we may need to ask for additional information to help secure a clear understanding of your financial position today, as well as a clear understanding of your financial projections into the future. So please be prepared to provide additional information upon request. Submitting your application. Applications are due by 5 p.m. October 30th, 2023, and may be submitted via email, in person, or mailed to the SLDC office. If you are submitting your application via email, please submit your email to sldc-grants@stlouis-mo.gov and be important to include in the subject line, North St. Louis Grant Program, and your business name. You may also hand deliver a PDF version or Microsoft version and Excel documents to the SLDC office, or you may mail that information to us as well. SLDC's office is located at 1520 Market Street, Suite 2000, St. Louis, Missouri, 63103. Please make that attention to the North St. Louis Grant Program, and it will be moved to the appropriate staff for consideration and moving forward in the process. Please note that if you are mailing your submission in, your submission is required to be post-dated by October 30th, 2023. That is important information to have. As we wrap up today's informational session, if you have questions after this conversation today, please send an email to Ms. Karan Hanks, who is one of the neighborhood managers here at St. Louis Development Corporation, and she will compile those questions and try to respond to you as soon as possible. I will encourage you, though, to add your questions into the chat if you have a moment to ask that last final question for us to be including your question along with others gathered from today's session and a previous session from yesterday. We look forward to aggregating those things and providing consistent responses to everyone on our website. And once you have submitted your application, if you have not heard from from us in 7 days, please make sure to reach out to Ms. Karan Hanks so that she can work as your partner to ensure that your application has been received and is now moving forward in the application process as we defined earlier in this informational presentation. I want to thank you all so very much for staying in this conversation today. We look forward to reading your submission and positively considering your work and your application